Rwanda has expressed its regret at the decision by the United States to impose sanctions that target only one party to a complex and long-standing conflict in eastern DRC. Let us be clear. Peace in the Great Lakes region demands accuracy, balance, and an honest appraisal of facts. The sanctions announced against the Rwanda Defense Force and 4 of its senior officers present a simplified, false narrative that does not reflect the full reality on the ground. They risk distorting a crisis that has persisted for more than 3 decades and involves hundreds of armed groups operating across eastern DRC. This is not a conflict born yesterday. There has been repeated ceasefire violations by the Kinshasa regime, including indiscriminate drone attacks and coordinated ground offenses carried out by its coalition. These actions have cost civilian lives and undermined diplomatic peace processes, namely Doha. The coalition operating alongside the FARDC includes foreign mercenaries, state-sponsored extremist ethnic militias known as Wazalendo, Burundian forces, and the DRC-backed FDLR, a genocidal terrorist militia whose origins trace directly to the perpetrators of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Under the Washington Accords, Kinshasa committed to an irreversible and verifiable end to state support for the FDLR. To date, no meaningful steps have been taken to fulfill that obligation. Rwanda's protection of its own nation against the existential threat of the DRC-backed FDLR is not optional. It is a sovereign responsibility, one that the RDF carries with discipline and resolve. Rwanda has been consistent. Lifting of defense measures must occur in tandem with the neutralization of the DRC-backed FDLR that pose an existential threat along Rwanda's borders. The sanctions announced alleged that the RDF provides support to the M23 in actions threatening the peace and stability of the DRC. These are serious claims. Yet, at the same time, well-documented reports show Wazalendo militias attacking communities, particularly the Banyamulenge in Uvira and surrounding territories, killing civilians, including women, children, and the elderly, looting homes, burning villages, and displacing families. Drone and artillery strikes have targeted densely populated areas with civilian casualties even recorded in the recent consecutive days. These dynamics deserve equal scrutiny. Accountability must be comprehensive. It cannot appear selective. When punitive measures are directed at one national defense institution, while other actors continue to violate ceasefires, collaborate with extremist militias and genocidal terrorists, and destabilize civilian populations, it raises legitimate questions about the consistency in international policy. Rwanda's security doctrine cannot be separated from its history. Since 1994, the nation has built its defense posture around the same principle: never again allow genocidal forces to organize unchecked along its borders. The country's internal stability in a volatile region is frequently cited as evidence of its effectiveness. The instability in eastern DRC predates current tensions and reflects deep structural governance challenges, historical grievances, local militia dynamics, and competition over mineral resources. Reducing such a multifaceted crisis to a neighboring state protecting its own denies reality and undermines genuine solutions. Rwanda has welcomed the Washington Accords implementation process, including the Joint Oversight Committee. These mechanisms require even-handed engagement from all partners. Rwanda states it remains committed to delivering on all aspects of the Accords, including the Regional Economic Integration Framework. However, sanctions imposed without parallel and verifiable progress on the disarmament and neutralization of the FDLR genocidaires makes us question the one-sidedness of this framework. All nations safeguard their security. Rwanda is no different. The principle is universal. States have a duty to protect their citizens from threats. Following the recent sanctions imposed by the United States on the Rwanda Defense Force and 4 of its senior officials, we are joined by researcher in critical discourse and conflict analysis in the Great Lakes, Dr. Bojana Coulibally, to discuss the implications of this move. Dr. Coulibally, as an analyst of the Great Lakes region, what is your assessment of these sanctions?
So thank you for this question. With these sanctions that were announced, I would like to say that we are in fact in a failed 2012 policy that we are repeating, but expecting to deliver a different outcome today. So the policy that was crafted by the Obama administration in 2012 failed to bring peace to Eastern DRC. In fact, in 2012, the Obama administration responded to the crisis in Eastern DRC, which opposed the DRC government and M23 by cutting military aid to Rwanda and backing UN sanctions on senior Rwandan officials, while at the same time giving Kinshasa virtually unchecked political cover and avoiding any serious engagement with the governance failures, the refugee issues, but also the continued threat posed by FDLR, which in fact, all of those fueled conflict since the early 1990s. So that approach failed from 2013 to 2021. Indeed, after sanctions were imposed on Rwanda and during the 8 years that M23 was in exile, the region was still unstable and insecurity increased in Eastern DRC. FDLR continued to recruit and train local armed groups such as Nyatura while continuing to perpetuate violence. Other armed groups emerged, and Eastern DRC became a theater of insecurity and violence. By 2022, we saw a resurgence of the same conflict dynamics. The Trump administration has essentially repeated this playbook, punishing Kigali while treating Kinshasa as a default partner, and again ignoring the structural drivers of 30 years of cyclical violence. So it is hard to see how recycling a failed 2012 policy can credibly be expected to deliver a different outcome today. And I would like to add that, in fact, these sanctions send a wrong message. Because while we punish Rwanda for its alleged support of AFC M23, we do not condemn DRC government violation of ceasefire, its targeted attacks on the Tutsi Banyamulenge in Minembwe, for example, the blockade of that community, which was confirmed itself by the Burundian military spokesperson. We are not condemning the DRC government continued collaboration with FDLR or its use of mercenaries and its arming of armed groups, including the Mai Mai and all the other armed groups that we call Wazalendo, that have been integrated. And of course, we're not condemning the use of mercenaries, which, as we know, has been outlawed. These sanctions do not look like there is any intention to resolve the crisis. These violations are so big, and yet no accountability is being posed on the DRC government. I mean, at this point, if we were told that the world was flat, it wouldn't even shock anyone. So we have accepted a parallel reality where victims are presented as perpetrators and perpetrators as victims. And in this case, I'm really talking about the targeted communities in both North Kivu and South Kivu that are being accused of fighting alongside M23 AFC and Rwanda.
Thank you for those insights. And according to you, Dr. Coulibally, what could be the long-term solution Americans should adopt for lasting peace in Eastern DRC and in the region at large?
Well, definitely sanctions are not a solution today, at least not given that we are currently engaged in the Washington and Doha peace agreements. I would like to say, to respond to your question, that what is important here is that DRC has failed to honor its commitment at many levels, and I think it's important that this is being denounced, or this is being raised as an issue. So let me just remind you, or let us remember what the Washington Accords actually request from each party. So as far as Rwanda is concerned, we're asking in the Washington Accords that there is a disengagement of forces or lifting of defense measures by Rwanda. So the parties are going to have signed to agree to implement the harmonized plan for the neutralization of the FDLR and disengagement of forces or lifting of defense measures by Rwanda. So this is the CONOPS framework. On the part of the DRC government, we have requested neutralization of the FDLR. That means that the parties agreed to implement the harmonized plan for the neutralization of the FDLR and disengagement of forces or lifting of defense measures by Rwanda, so the CONOPS, which was agreed on October 31st, 2024. as provided by this agreement. So at this point, the CONOPS is only very partially implemented. The benchmarks on both neutralizing the FDLR and lifting Rwanda's defensive measures are lagging, so the overall process is stalled. But of course, Rwanda's defensive measures are linked to the threat posed by FDLR. So we can understand that if there is no intention of neutralizing FDLR, Rwanda probably doesn't see its defensive measures being lifted anytime soon. I would like to add that the CONOPS lays out 4 phases. There's preparation, identification, location of FDLR, and disengagement of Rwandan defensive measures. Now, DRC has not executed its part of the neutralization of FDLR. We have seen it in their official statements. First, they asked FDLR to lay down their weapons in a communique. Second, they claimed that FDLR are in the AFCM 23 administered areas. This is far from the truth, as we know, since we do have evidence and from testimonies on the ground. I've seen it myself during my research, talking to people that FDLR are currently fighting alongside the DRC coalition on all the front lines in both North Kivu and South Kivu. And then we're also seeing these violations of ceasefire in Masisi, in Minembwe, with airstrikes and drone attacks on civilians, while the Trump administration or the UN are not condemning these violations. So my recommendation, of course, or the way I see things going forward, is for us to really look at honoring these different references or terms of references of these two agreements or these peace processes that are interlinked. As far as Doha is concerned, currently AFCM 23 are, of course, in negotiation with DRC government in Doha. However, once again, DRC has not honored its commitment, including, for example, the release of the prisoners, but also currently even the monitoring of the ceasefire. We are currently still waiting for that MOU to be signed between the two parties so that we have an identified team that is going to go on the ground to monitor the ceasefire that is supposed to be taking place, but it is not, given that DRC is currently directly attacking using drone strikes and other airstrikes, and also using, of course, Wazalendo on the ground.
Dr. Coulibally, thank you for your time and for those very key insights. And to you all, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.